Thank you for being here with us. Fall Family Weekend is a time for families and students to experience campus together. It's also a time for dining services to share great food experiences with their students and their families. For more than a decade, Dining Services has been a top-ranked program by publications such as Princeton Review. But our approach to dining is more than just the food we serve. Each semester, we offer events for experiential learning and to build community. Events such as cultural learning opportunities, as well as our annual Chili Challenge, have become favorites. Even during a challenging time like this fall, we continue to innovate to enhance dining experiences for our students and faculty. In the spirit of Family Weekend, we have created a video of Executive Chef James Zeisler preparing two of his family's favorite recipes with Dr. Frank Shushok, Vice President of Student Affairs. We hope you enjoy it.
Hey, Chef James, one of the things that I love about Virginia Tech Dining is that we have these things called executive chefs, and that's you.
Yeah.
So how does someone become an executive chef? What exactly is that?
Well, for me, an executive chef is the leader of the kitchen. Not only do we make the menus, but we're in charge of the organization of the kitchen, delegating responsibilities to our brigade or our sous chefs and chefs de cuisines, just to make sure that it runs as a well-oiled machine in the background so that the front of the house serves, very well.
Well, no wonder Virginia Tech students have great food, but listen, I know how to make two things, tacos and spaghetti. Do you think I could learn to do anything like you're doing here?
Yeah, I definitely think so. These recipes are fairly simple. Both these recipes come from my background, my family. I wanted to do a spinach casserole. To note, we actually serve this spinach casserole at one of our shops called Dish every now and again. So this actually is being served at Virginia Tech. And then I want to do a pork loin for the main course that my father used to make during family get-togethers, and really just anytime he wanted to make pork, he went with his go-to of the pork tenderloin.
And your dad's a chef too, right?
Yeah, he's the program head over at Virginia Western, the culinary department. So I've had the pleasure of chefs all around me at a very young age.
Now, do you all use the same technique? Is anything different about the way you do stuff and your dad does stuff?
Yeah, pretty much I am very hands-on, and my dad as an instructor is very by the book. So when we are in the kitchen together, it's a lot of nitpicking, I think, by him that are by the book, and then a lot of doing by me.
All right, well, let's roll. I'm excited about this,
okay.
And I'm planning on learning some things.
So for the spinach casserole, this actually came from my great-grandmother. It's fairly simple. We're just going to cream some cream cheese and butter.
So it's very healthy.
Yeah. Actually, this recipe has gotten 2 people that I know of that have refused to ever eat vegetables to eat their spinach, just because it's so healthy. But what we're going to do is we're going to add the butter to our mixer. And then to that, we're going to add this cream cheese. The butter was about 2 ounces. The cream cheese is 2 pounds, or about 2 packs of cream. 1 pound of cream cheese, which is 2 packs of the cream cheese you can buy at the store.
Well, so far I could just stop right there. That sounds like a great meal.
Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to just cream it. So it's technically a baking terminology. We're just going to mix the cream and the butter until it almost kind of looks like a cream cheese icing. Once it gets to that consistency, we're going to add the spinach and then the seasonings. All we're going to season this with is garlic powder and soy sauce. My great-grandmother came over from England off the boat. She immigrated, and this is a recipe that she passed down, and the entire family has no idea where she came up with the soy sauce. But we're going to go ahead and let that whip a little bit. Once it's done whipping and we add the seasonings and the spinach, we're going to let that whip a little bit as well. And then we're going to put that in our cast iron casserole dish.
And I've always, people who cook, they follow directions, but chefs, they just seem to know exactly how much of something to put in there. Is that a myth or is that a real deal?
No, that comes with experience, I think.
Yeah.
It's a lot of tasting, just to kind of see in the experience of what things are supposed to look like, textures, things like that, to know when things are done. But yeah, my grandmother, my great grandmother, she never had a a recipe book that had actual measurements. It's just what she knew what to put in there just through the experience. All right.
That looks great. So now you're just putting the soy sauce in there?
So we're gonna put about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce in here.
Where's your tablespoon?
It's in my head.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So pretty much I can actually tell because it's going to get a slight darker color because of the soy sauce. And my great grandmother taught me the secret of what color that's supposed to be. So that's how I know.
Wow, wow. And what is that right there?
So this is the garlic powder. It's dry garlic. My dad made the mistake one time of using fresh garlic. Sometimes it's good to use dry ingredients, sometimes it's good to use fresh. In this specific recipe, the dry garlic works better. I don't know the science behind it, I know it just does.
So the good thing here, it sounds like you've done lots of experimentation on this particular dish. And so if anyone were to try this at home, we would be able to do it perfectly.
Well, definitely. So my great-grandmother only passed this down to my grandmother, and then my grandmother passed it down to my stepmother. So only one person really knew how to make it, so we'd all attempt to. It was really the soy sauce that got us.
But do you think it's okay that you're sharing it with the world?
Well, I think so. It's delicious. I mean, honestly,
right.
it made 2 people I know that have never eaten spinach before love it, and if we can get people to eat their green vegetables anyway, then I think that's a win.
And we can get this in the dining centers at Virginia Tech?
We can get that at Dish at Owen's Dining Hall.
Nice.
It's not an everyday offering, but it is definitely in our mix of offerings.
Yeah. You know what my favorite place is in Owens?
What's that?
Just think about it.
I give up.
Fantastic Franks.
Yeah? Well,
Yeah.
all right. That's fair.
Yeah.
That is our most popular sandwich.
Some people think that has something to do with Frank Beamer. It's crazy.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah. You thought that was...
I thought so.
Okay. Well, what did you just put in there?
So this is just the spinach. Now we use frozen spinach. Now, when you get the frozen spinach, you want to grab the 24-ounce family pack. You want to let it thaw for about a day.
Yeah.
That way it's not frozen. And then when you open the bag, you want to take it out and you want to actually try and make a snowball out of that spinach. And what that's going to do is just drain all that liquid out of there. You really don't want any of the liquid in there when you start mixing it because it'll thin the cream cheese out, and you really don't want that. But as far as the amounts, I don't know if I told you, but it was 24 ounces of the spinach. We did about 2 tablespoons of the soy sauce. We did about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of the garlic powder. 1 pound of cream cheese, 2 ounces of butter.
Wow. And why is frozen spinach preferable to anything else?
So for me, the frozen, this is one of the only recipes I prefer frozen spinach. It's more dense. It's already chopped. All you have to do is just strain it. If I were to cook my own fresh spinach, chop it, cool it, strain it, I still don't feel it'll be as dense as this is, just the way it's been processed. And for this specific casserole, it's just really nice to have a dense spinach.
Wow. Now that's the way I like to eat spinach right there. That's awesome.
So once it's all creamed, we're gonna take it out. We're gonna use our spatula here and get all these good bits off. We're gonna put it on our casserole dish. This is a cast iron casserole dish and it's been seasoned. If we were to use like a regular baking pan or a baking dish, we'd wanna spray it or grease it to prevent this, to help the sticking. But this cast iron casserole has been seasoned. Now what that means is that we've cooked so many times in this casserole dish, kind of like if you had a grandma that had a cast iron skillet on the stove and it always stayed on the stove and it never got washed. What happened is it was seasoned by all the oils and the fats.
You mean this really will flavor the dish?
Well, if it was my grandmother's, it would flavor the dish spectacularly.
This is not your grandmother's.
It's not as old, so it's not as seasoned.
Wow.
But given some time, it'll grow up and be a nice seasoned casserole.
And that's heavy.
Yep. That's how you know it's real.
Wow. So is what you're saying that we shouldn't clean our pans, because if we leave them just sitting on the stove for years, they become part of making good food?
Only cast iron.
Oh.
So it's just the cast iron. because the iron's porous enough to actually let that oil come in, and it just creates a nice thin seasoned layer that prevents sticking and imparts a little bit of flavor.
Wow. That looks awesome.
Yeah, so right now we're just going to pull all this spinach into one area so that we can just kind of plop it right in our casserole dish.
Wow.
And you want to just really push it down in there to get out any air pockets, fill it as best we can.
I mean, it's actually pretty.
Yeah, it looks real nice. We're gonna put some breadcrumbs on top, and that, when it bakes, will turn nice and golden brown. Just looks very appealing, very appetizing. Probably how we got everyone that didn't like to eat the spinach to eat the spinach. So you could bake it like this if you wanted to. It'll get a nice little golden color on top because of the cream cheese when it bakes. But we like to add some breadcrumbs, and these are Panko breadcrumbs. So the Panko breadcrumbs are a Japanese style breadcrumb. The only really difference is that it's just a larger grain of breadcrumb, not as fine. So it gives it more of a crunch. Now, this was not my grandmother's recipe. I actually changed that myself. She would use just the regular breadcrumbs, the real fine grain ones. So pretty much once you have it all panned up and breadcrumbs put on top, we're gonna put this into a 350-degree oven. We're gonna put it in for about 30-45 minutes. It really depends on how thick your casserole is. The thinner your pan is, the quicker it's gonna cook. The thicker, the longer it's gonna take, just because it's so dense.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
All right, so while that's baking, I'm gonna move all this out of the way, and then we're gonna get into the pork loin that my father made famous. Well, at least in our household, he made it famous.
So pork loin was a big thing at your house?
Yeah, it's one of those cheaper cuts of meat that like work really well. Since it's pork, it was never that expensive.
Chef James, what is a pork loin? What is that?
Well, actually, I misspoke. So it's a pork tenderloin is what we're going to be using. The pork loin is pretty much the loin where you can get a pork chop from. The pork tenderloin is a smaller muscle of meat, and it's pretty much the filet mignon of a pig. So it's just very tender. It's juicy. It's a wonderful cut of meat. I'm gonna go grab that.
I'm all about the filet mignon of the pig. Oh, that looks beautiful.
Yeah. So when we go to the store and get the pork tenderloin, they come in packs of 2. You can get them at any grocery store, local. Now, when we get them, there's just a little bit of processing that we have to do, and I want to show you what that looks like. So we have the tenderloin here, and you usually have this thin layer of membrane, and underneath that membrane is what we call silver skin. So the silver skin is a very it's chewy, it's stringy, and unlike anything else that you find in meat, but you cannot cook it away. Like pot roasts and things like that with tough cuts of meat, you can cook it long enough and then it becomes tender. Silver skin does not ever become tender. The only thing you can do to it is peel it off and throw it away.
Nice. So you cut all that off.
So yeah, this is a little bit of fat here. We're just gonna clean it up a little bit. But that silver skin that was right here, we just wanted to get rid of it.
So what about the fat? Is it good to leave the fat on there or not?
Yeah, because that fat's gonna render, which is gonna just add and provide flavor to the meat as it cooks in the oven.
Yeah. James, I have no idea what render means. What is this chef language?
I guess it's jargon. All rendering means is when you cook fat, the fat becomes a liquid, so you're rendering the liquid out of that solid fat, is all that really means.
Nice, I'm gonna use that at home.
So as you can see, we have a nice thick fat end, and then we have a thin little tapered end here, and that's just the way that the muscle is made. So what I'm gonna do to help with even cooking, I'm just gonna square it up, which means I'm just gonna kind of make that even. I'm going to find where this taper kind of stops. So I'm gonna cut that off here.
Oh.
And then we're just gonna cut these into pretty much portions. All right, and then when I break this down, we're gonna do the same thing. Now you'll notice that I have 3 piles. I have my scrap pile that is not usable. I have a scrap pile that is usable, and then what we're gonna be cooking. The scrap pile that's usable, that's good for anything for grinding, to make meatloaves or meatballs. We could use that and just dice it up and make like a stir fry or a quick taco or something like that. I mean, I think you mentioned you like to make tacos.
Yeah, I'm excellent at taco making, actually. Do you believe that, James?
Yes, I believe everybody is good at making what they like to make.
Do you think I could become a good chef if I went to school?
Of course, I believe everybody can become anything that they want to become. To tell you the truth, it just depends on if they're willing to work for it.
Hey, well, what makes great chefs? I mean, what is it? Is it the love of food? Is it artistry? Is it commitment? What is it? What makes great chefs?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I think a great chef is essentially a great leader. I think a great chef is able to visualize a goal, able to have his team or her team see that same goal and have everyone work towards that goal. I think that's what the main qualities of a great chef are.
Because working in a kitchen that's a team sport.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very team oriented. Not one person can do anything. There's no way I could do what Owens does by myself.
Yeah.
Not at all.
What has surprised you about dining services at Virginia Tech?
The sheer volume.
Yeah.
I came from a country club, and then before that I came from a small bakery, a local bakery here in town. Now we were busy, don't get me wrong, and I guess the staff compared to the amount of customers we had, percentage-wise, it was about this, it was comparable. But actually coming in here and doing 6,000 transactions in my unit a day, it's a beast, and it was very eye-opening just to kind of see all the little things that needed to be taken care of and attended to just to make sure we run properly every day.
And the excellent food, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get this at the University of Virginia.
Probably not.
Yeah,
Definitely not.
I can't imagine that
Definitely not.
happens. Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna use these for our meal today. These we're gonna save for later. Yeah, I think we're ready to go ahead and get it started. So I have a pan back here, a nice large skillet. Turn it, there we go. We're gonna preheat that. While that's preheating, we're gonna season our pork. So seasoning this pork, pretty much the basic seasoning for anything is gonna be salt and pepper. Salt and pepper really does not add flavor. It enhances the natural flavor that's already there.
Is that right?
Yes. So salt is just a flavor enhancer. So it's not going to impart any like garlic powder or any type of herbs. Those are going to impart their flavors. The seasoning is going to just bring out the flavors that are already there.
And what is that
better.
seasoning?
This is just black pepper.
Oh, that's pepper.
It's
Okay.
a fine grind black pepper.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, once that gets heated, we're gonna add a little oil to the pan, and then we're gonna sear the pork loin. Now, searing a piece of meat like this, we're not gonna finish cooking on the top of the stove. We're going to just sear it as hard as we can, and when I say that, I mean as high heat as we can without the oil catching fire. So a trick for that would be when you put the oil into the hot pan, it's gonna start rippling, like if you were to throw a stone into a pond.
Yeah.
So it'll start to ripple, then it's gonna get a little shimmery, and then after that's gonna start to smoke. Right before it
And we're
starts
gonna let
to
it
smoke.
render, right?
After we put the pork in, the fat on the pork will render, yes.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I feel smart.
So we'll bring this over here. It's always good when you're cooking to bring your product to you and have everything kind of in its place. And we have a word for that, it's called mise en place.
It's called what?
mise en place.
Mise en place?
So what that means is everything's in its place. So the goal is to bring everything to my workstation. So this is going to be my workstation. I'm bringing my pork over here. Once it's ready to go, we're going to add the oil, put the pork in, season the other side of it because I don't want to flip it around and lose the seasoning that I already have on that plate. I'd rather lose my seasoning in the pan because it will all come back together in the end. But you see how it's smoking a little there? So we're going to add some oil. And this is just a neutral oil, so it's not an olive oil. Olive oil doesn't have as high a smoke point as vegetable oils or soy oils.
And how do you know how hot to make the pan?
For the application that I want, so we want to sear this meat. So we want to cook that as high as we
really hot.
Yes. And what that's going to do, it's going to change the texture of the meat. It's going to have that nice crust on the outside. But if we were to leave that in the pan on that high heat, we're just going to have a burnt mess with raw in the middle. So we see how we have wisps of smoke coming off the oil there. So we know that the pan should be hot, and that's the noise that we want to hear. Now I've got this large pan because we don't want a tall with overcrowding. So we don't want to put these things, the pork, too close together. So they have their own free space to get that nice hard sear around it. And then on the other side, we're just gonna season this.
Is that more salt?
Yep, just a little salt on the other side.
More pepper.
And more pepper. Now with whole muscle meats like this, it is okay to season a little heavy because a lot of that seasoning is going to come off in the pan. It's not going to stay on the meat. So what we're looking for is that nice color that's coming right there. And we want it to be just a little bit darker.
That looks great.
So then we're just going to flip it and sear the other side. Now the reason why we have a curved side is we have a nice flat side here. We put it on the other flat side, but we still have this side right here that's not getting any sear.
Oh, so you sear it all the way around.
Yeah, we definitely want to sear it all the way around. So we're just going to put that there. And we'll tilt it to just kind of get that side seared. Well, that way there's nothing raw there anymore.
I think that's always what surprises me about cooking is there's a lot of strategy.
Yeah, it's always, at least me personally, I'm always thinking about how I can do something better, faster, without degrading the quality. So we're pretty good and seared on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring this over here. And so there's a little bit of fat that rendered.
Rendering, yeah.
We got a little fat that rendered mixed in, but we're a little heavy on the oil, I think, so I'm going to get rid of some of that. Not all of it, just a little bit. And what we're going to add to this now is some aromatics, or some onions and tomatoes and some garlic and some rosemary. And what that's going to do is help build our sauce at the end. So we still have the pan on high with the oil. We're going to throw our onions in there. And the thing I like about this dish is that it only takes one pan.
How many onions? Is that just one onion? Or?
That was about one small onion diced. And then we had about almost a pint of cherry tomatoes here. And we have them. So we didn't want to leave them whole because we want to get that heat to bring out that tomato from the inside. If they're whole, the heat has to break through the skin of that tomato, you know what I mean?
Nice.
So that's why we have these in half.
I just keep thinking about the poor students at the University of Virginia and they eat frozen food.
That's a shame.
Like
that
TV
really
dinners and stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely a shame.
And this is what we get. It's stunning.
Well, so we're going to add some garlic and butter to this. I just gotta grab that.
Oh, more butter, Chef.
More butter. Yeah, that's the French influence I have.
Now, Chef James, I've heard some people use dry rosemary. What's the?
Some people do use dry rosemary, but I believe that's bush leaf. I believe that fresh rosemary in this dish is the only way to go.
Huh. Have you ever had it with dry rosemary?
Once or twice.
Yeah,
I've had it a few times. It just wasn't the greatest. It really wasn't the greatest. So
who prepared it with dry rosemary?
my father prepared it with dry
man, your
rosemary.
dad did that?
Yes, he did.
Golly, unbelievable.
So we're gonna deglaze the pan. What I
Okay,
mean by
yeah.
that is I have a liquid here, and this liquid is a chicken stock, chicken broth.
And
so what we want to do is we want to cool this pan down a little bit.
you gotta show I mean, that is awesome. That looks so good.
All right, and we want to throw some garlic cloves in there. We're just gonna leave them whole because we want to let them roast. All right, then we're gonna turn the heat off. And for the rosemary, the fresh rosemary.
Fresh rosemary.
Fresh rosemary.
Not dried.
We're just gonna lay these sprigs whole. We're not gonna do anything else except break them in half. And we're gonna pretty much put one pork tenderloin
On top of the rosemary.
On top of each sprig of the rosemary.
Wow.
That way when it roasts, that flavor is just gonna come up inside that pork loin.
Oh my gosh.
So for that, we're gonna go ahead and put that right in the oven.
Oh my gosh, that looks so good.
And we can put that into the oven for, oh, almost forgot the butter.
Yeah, you gotta put the butter in there. Wow. It's good to know that sometimes a chef doesn't do everything exactly like they plan.
Yeah.
You improvise.
Yeah, and that's the fun thing about food. Honestly, you can improvise and make food work any way you want, except for baking. Baking is a science. You mess up an ingredient in baking, then usually you mess up the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
That's why I prefer regular cooking. So that's gonna roast, same 350 degree oven. It'll roast probably about 15-20 minutes. We want to get an internal temperature of 145 degrees or greater. And then once that's done, we're gonna let it rest.
Yeah.
So that's cooking. In preparation of today, I went ahead and prepared some already, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this area here.
Chef James, so far, what do you think of my performance in the kitchen?
That's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I
That's
couldn't ask for anything better. I enjoy the questions. Keeps me engaged, entertained. I love it. Just kind of move that over a little bit. That'll be for us. All right. So we have 2 plates that we're
Oh
gonna
my
make.
gosh. Wow.
And I need to set up the cutting board for the pork. All right, I think that's it. So,
Oh, I forgot about that. Wow.
so we have the casserole. All right, so this is what it should look like.
So that's been there about 35 minutes?
35, 45 minutes. Same thing, you want that inside temperature to be about 145 degrees. Usually you can tell, just like my great grandmother would, when it gets nice and crispy around the edges and golden brown delicious on top is usually when it's done.
Wow.
And then we have our pork. Just gonna get it going. All right, so now the pork, once it's done and hits that 145 degree temperature, we're going to reduce the liquid that's here into the sauce that we want. And the only thing we really have to do is just remove the rosemary, because you don't need the rosemary in the dish to flavor it. You just need it to cook with the rosemary,
Yeah.
and it'll get that flavor for you. So all we're gonna do, so in this pan are the onions, the garlic, the butter that melted, the tomatoes that we started with, and we're just gonna heat this up until it kind of reduces and gets a lot of that water content out, and that will be our finished sauce.
Wow. I just can't tell you how good this looks.
Now the pork here, after it was done cooking, we let it rest for about 15 minutes, and letting it rest, all it means is taking it out of the oven and then putting it onto a cutting board or into a plate or another dish, and you can wrap it in foil if you'd like to help retain the heat. But we want to let it rest so that all the internal juices distribute evenly. If you've ever taken any type of meat out of the pan, out of the oven, and cut into it right away, and you have a lot of that juice just escaping, it's because we didn't let the meat rest, and that's why.
Wow, wow. And it's okay, so the cooling process is actually important.
Yes, it's very important. So if you were to cook a piece of meat and take it out of whatever you were cooking it in and just cut right into it and it bleeds all its juice, that will leave you with a dry end product.
Wow.
And we really don't want to serve a dry product.
Wow.
Okay, so this is technically a pan sauce, but it doesn't look very saucy. What we actually would call that would be like a relish or hot relish or a chutney. My dad wouldn't include one of the any type of pan sauce either, so we used to just get a nice pork loin with dry rosemary, sliced, and that's all it was served. This way I think is a little bit better.
It seems to me that dried rosemary was pretty traumatic for you.
My father says the same thing. He actually, every time he comes over and we cook a family meal, he'll ask me why I'm not serving pork loin. So this is why I chose this dish, so that for everyone can see, I'm making pork tenderloin the way my father did, but I think a little bit better. I just need to find some gloves, excuse me, and then I can slice this pork for you. And we're ready to plate up, I believe.
Wow, it is unbelievable. I just can't believe you can get this at Virginia Tech.
So the pork, what we're going to do is we're going to slice it nicely, and we cook it to 145, which means it may have a little bit of a pinkish tint, and that's totally okay.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Wow, I can smell it. Wow, beautiful.
And it should have cooked nice and evenly, because remember we squared it up and then trimmed it up, and we had our usable scrap, which made it all four of these cook fairly evenly, which is exactly what we were looking for. All right, so that's about a portion. And what we're gonna do is just kind of flatten it out and let it cascade naturally.
Oh my gosh.
Set it there. And we can do the same thing with this one.
And how long did you say you have to let this rest before you?
About 10 to 15 minutes. Now, traditionally, old school chefs will tell you that you should rest your meat as long as you cook it. I think that could be a little bit long sometimes. I think an average 10 to 15 minutes is just fine. So the end piece, just as another tip for you, if you were to present this, you don't really want to see that end piece because you don't get to see the nice color. So they'll usually just kind of flip that over, so that way you can just plate a little bit nicely.
Nice.
Okay, so we have two extra. Set those two aside. The casserole, I just gotta grab a spoon for you. So when I was a kid and I used to eat this, I used to try and get as much of the breadcrumb as I could. It was my favorite part.
Yeah, that is the best part.
So what we're gonna try and do, get as much as we can. All right. All right.
Wow. This really is beautiful.
Yep, this dish it's one of my favorites. We have it at our family. We always have it every Thanksgiving. My stepmother's the one who's actually responsible for bringing it. I have a sister, and she's supposed to be passing down the recipe. So either she has to wait for my stepmother or she can just watch this and figure out how to make it.
Yeah.
And then finally, we just need the sauce for the pork. More of a relish.
Does that go on top or?
Yeah, so we're going to put it right on top because this is pretty much all the flavor of the pork, all the rosemary, and so we're just going to kind of put it right in the middle because we don't want to cover up all the color of that nice pork that we cooked. All right, doing the same thing over here. Now we have a lot of earth colors here, earth tones. So another little trick to brighten things up. It's kind of a little trick that the culinarians use. We'll just take some sort of herbs, either parsley, chervil. We're using chives in this case, but it just adds a nice little pop of bright green.
Yeah, it looks really fresh.
It's very nice. I enjoy it. And that's really it. So
wow.
here we have two dishes that I have been passed down from my family. I think it being Parents' Weekend coming up, we kind of wanted to demonstrate, the two dishes that I have from my family, and we kind of left a blank space here, and that way people at home and their families, this really pairs well with any type of, traditional family meal or family side dish that anybody may have at home or want to pair with this.
Chef James, what I love about this whole thing is this is a recipe that has been through several generations of your family. Are you going to pass it on to your family?
Yeah, definitely. So right now I cook with my daughter any chance that I get. She's really taken a loving to it, honestly. I am in the process of adopting her younger brother. So hopefully I'll be able to pass along a lot of these recipes as well.
Well, this is a unique family weekend at Virginia Tech. We don't have everybody here like we usually do, but Virginia Tech is a family, and we're looking forward to next year when we can all be together and do this again.
Definitely. So without further ado, we have some silverware here. If you'd like to have a bite of any of the goodness here, there's a fork for you.
Awesome.
And a knife.
All right, so I get to dig in here.
I'll join you.
Let's do it. Wow, oh my gosh. The thing about this is so pretty, you don't want to mess it up.
Well, thank you.
But I'm going to mess it up. Do you eat with a mask on?
I never have.
Okay,
I haven't learned how.
all right, well, let's give it a shot. Oh my gosh.
It's good?
Wow. The rosemary.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Wow. I know those poor students at UVA aren't eating like this.
Nope, not at all.
Oh, I can't wait to try this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Chef James, we're really fortunate to have you at Virginia Tech.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, ton of fun.
I know Chef James and Dr. Shushok enjoyed filming their time in the kitchen. If you have food traditions, whether it's passed down generation to generation or just something fun you love to make in your family, we'd love you to share it with us. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate the opportunity to serve your students in our dining centers. We look forward to the opportunity to serve you back on campus soon. To learn more about our program, visit dining.vt.edu and be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels for more videos and to learn about upcoming special events. Thank you.